A little bit of the formatting. What we're going to do is we're going to go down the line. Each candidate will have about 1:30 to give self-introductions, a little bit about themselves, their candidacy, what they're running on, etc. We'll go all the way down, and then we will pose 2 questions. I will pose 2 questions to the candidates. It'll be the same question down and back. If a candidate is mentioned by their opponent, then the opponent will have a 30-second rebuttal period. If not, then we just keep moving down the line. Okay, so we have people that are running against each other all the way down, except for Vanessa. You're the sole runner in yours, so congratulations.
Filing deadline's 6 weeks away.
Yeah, 6 weeks. Yeah, 6 weeks. So something else could happen, but that's okay. We'll worry about that later. So then, once we're done with that, each candidate will have 1:30 for a closing statement, and then we will release the candidates, and then we will have an internal discussion. For the questions, each candidate during their period of questioning has 1 minute to answer. You can see the super green light here. This is a traffic light, essentially, and I think when we get down to 10 seconds or something left, it'll be yellow. Yellow is caution, means stop, and red, stop. And it is hard, I will admit, I will be the first to admit, I am terrible about interrupting people because I got thumped across the head a few times as a little fella. So it's hard for me to interrupt, but I will do my best to do so to keep this thing moving. Everyone good?
Well, good morning, everybody. When I ran for mayor 2 years ago, my priorities were ending Salem's homeless crisis, increasing affordable housing, facilitating smart development, protecting the environment, and equity and inclusion for all. Excuse me. We have spent the last 2 years on those and many other initiatives. We passed a $300 million community improvement bond. We implemented our Salem. We rewrote the development code. We've made changes to allow increased density in larger buildings, and we eliminated parking minimums throughout the city. We have prioritized the development and building of new housing units, and we've made it more financially viable to do so. We have made huge strides in sheltering, affordable housing, and permanent supportive housing. We preserved, developed, or incentivized 52 units of permanent supportive housing at Yaquina Hall, 343 units of affordable housing at Mahonia Crossing, 224 units of affordable housing at Orchard Park, 17 units of affordable housing for veterans through Dev Northwest, 34 units of affordable housing for veterans at Courtney's Place, and 147 market rate and 10 affordable units at Rivenwood Apartments at the old Nordstrom site. And we're about to announce who will be developing Block 50, the former UGM site that will become a showcase for our downtown. We opened the third micro-shelter community, the Navigation Center, and implemented the SOS team to address unmanaged camping and garbage in the city. And let's not forget that we introduced commercial passenger air service to the Salem Airport, a launch that has been hugely successful and will be a game changer for our region. Stay tuned for more on that really soon. I'm running for re-election because there is more work to be done. I've been mayor for 454 days, and we're just getting started. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Clifford Eiffler-Rodriguez. I am running for mayor. I grew up here, been back here, keep coming back here. I'm running because, largely all of the mayoral candidates are going to share a similar philosophy. Housing is a crisis. It's an intergenerational crisis. My mom lives with me. She gets $1,300 from Social Security. There's not a place she can live here. Luckily, I'm here. I'm there to support her as a family member. But that intergenerational crisis goes down to folks who are just getting into the market. So housing is my utmost priority because, frankly, there's not enough places to live here in Salem. We see that press into our houselessness crisis, and I appreciate the efforts of both the mayor and councilor, the current council, in striving to create more. But part of it is the urgency. Salem is poised to be a regional player, but it's time to kind of take that mantle. For a long time, we haven't grown up yet. It's time for our city to mature, to use our commercial corridors and build them up. It's time to be a big city. The advocacy that we see across the board between the commercial and the political sector, my apologies. That light is so bright.
Well, good morning, everyone. I woke up with a lot of thoughts today, and one of them was this. I attended a League of Oregon Cities meeting some time back, and one of the presenters said, if you're a councilor or a mayor, you need to stay out of the engine room, get into the wheelhouse where you belong, and steer the ship. And I feel very strongly that we need to spend some time in the engine room and find out what's going on at the city. I could also relate it to a garden. When we grew up, we were the 6 kids in the family, and we all had to weed all summer long because the weeds were the problem. I believe we need to spend some time in the garden, pulling weeds and figuring out what's not working and cultivating good soil and bringing up good things for our city. I toured Rivenwood apartment complex the other day. That's the old Nordstrom. The men's department looks out at the old JCPenney and sees candies, etc. As we were going through, I thought, I love new construction. I absolutely love it, but I wouldn't want to live here. I want to do something about the mess that we have here. I hate trash.
Hi, everyone. My name's Celine Coleman. I may look like a new face to most of you, but I've been here in Salem a couple years now, and I agree there are big problems such as homelessness and the lack of housing even downtown, because Ward 1, we're in Ward 1 right here, and it goes all the way down to State Street. So I think that Salem shouldn't be compared to cities such as Portland or Eugene, and that it should just be Salem being compared to Salem. Salem could have something unique here. I mean, look at the success of the airport that a lot of people were against. We have apartments growing, but we don't have businesses growing downtown. We have them leaving with Rite Aid most recently. So I would like you guys to take a chance on me and just think about the growth that Salem could have.
Good morning. My name is Virginia Stapleton. I am your City Council President and the representative for Ward 1. I have lived in Salem my whole life, so a little over 40 years, and in Ward 1 for about 17. So long history here in the area, and really proud to serve for the representative of Ward 1. The mayor said a lot of the different things that the council has been very successful over the last 3 years of my time on council. But I likewise would like to stress the importance of that $300 million bond with the focus on safety and infrastructure. Implementing that now is our challenge moving forward, and it's going really well. Revitalizing our downtown is key to Ward 1's success as well as the city as a whole. We are looking at almost 500 units downtown that are approved for downtown right now for housing, which is fantastic, and it's really a change in how we are living in our downtowns as we move forward into the future. I also would like to stress the focus we've had on North Downtown, which is an area that has a lot of potential, especially for Ward 1. That has been a focus of mine and will continue to be. Again, the airport and the importance of tourism couldn't be more important for our local businesses moving forward. And of course, the amazing work we've been doing on homelessness. We've heard some wonderful numbers of Marion Polk over the last couple of years have reduced their homelessness by 7%. That is unlike any other area in the state, so fantastic work here. And of course, raising the bar on public discord. I think that is something the City Council here has done an amazing job at. So really proud to be here and working for Ward 1.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Nathan Soltz, and I'm proud to be running for Salem City Council Ward 3. First, let's thank you all for hosting this, and thank you, Lena, for organizing it. But I must say I am not much of a morning person, so this might be a little rough for me. I live in the Cambridge neighborhood, and I'm currently the board secretary of the Morningside Neighborhood Association, and professionally, I am the chief of staff for State Senator Lou Frederick. I was born and raised in Medford, and I moved to Salem in 2015 to attend Chemeketa before transferring to Western. I'm the first in my family to earn a 4-year degree, and I did not come from a wealthy family. So I often worked as many as three jobs at a time in order to pay my own way through college. I've been civically involved since I was 15 years old. And I didn't come from a politically active family either. It was just kind of a natural interest of mine. But that said, I'm a policy wonk. I like to be behind the scenes. So running for the seat was not something that I planned to do. And honestly, it took quite a few conversations with Councilor Phillips before I decided to do it. But my belief in the importance of civic involvement is unwavering, as is my belief in the opportunity of this community. A key component of my campaign is the need for collaboration and moving the city forward. I think that those things go hand in hand, and I believe that I have the experience and the background to do exactly that. So thank you all again for hosting this, and I look forward to this conversation.
All right. First off, thank you all for being here. I'm sure just to hear me speak, for not any of these other people. But to start off, I put a palm card in everyone's card or on everyone's table before I started this. And then if you're online, you can go to shaneforsalem.com and go to the issues page to kind of scroll down and see what my priorities are. So because you kind of have them in front of you, I'm not going to talk as much about my priorities. I'm going to talk more about why those priorities matter to me. So I grew up here in Salem. I went to McKay. I'm a graduate of McKay, went to Western for my college, and then got a master's later on in my life. And through that process, I met my wife of 15 years. She's a teacher over at Parish Middle School. And we decided to stay here and raise our family here, right? We could have gone anywhere, but this is where we decided to stay and build our lives. Unfortunately, through that process, we've kind of seen some erosion happen within our community, and we're kind of being eaten from within. And with that, we need some major adjustments and some major changes that can put us back on track and make us a place that my kids, because that's what I'm focused on. I'm focused on my kids and your kids and making sure that it's somewhere that they also want to build their life here, that they want to stay here and that they want to fight and they want to make this place better, not just move somewhere else like we're seeing happen quite a bit. So that's what I'm focused on. I'm focused on making sure that we can make this place a place that's secure, a place that's safe, a place that is home, a place that my kids can always come back and say, this is the spot that I felt like I belonged, and a spot that I feel like I can continue to stay in. Last thing I want is to have to travel around the country to see my grandkids. That sounds terrible. So.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for allowing me to sit here. As I've been listening to the other candidates, I thought I had a game plan. I thought I knew exactly what I was going to say, but yeah, that's not. So anyway, I'm Hamadi Jackson. I am running for Ward 5. The reason that I'm running is because, three main issues. One is the homelessness issue, but more than just the homelessness, it's what are we doing exactly? How are we doing things, and why are we doing them? Does it work? And if it doesn't work, what can we do next? The next thing would be that small businesses and businesses in general is the key to keeping the middle class and getting people moving forward in their future. The next thing would be just our children in general. Like, what are we doing with education? What are we doing with prevention of getting them on the right, or actually not prevention, but getting them on the right path? I'm super nervous. I'm gonna stumble like 20,000 times, so just fair warning. But what are we doing? Because we have been seeing a spike in violence and in different crimes. So what are we doing and how are we doing it? That's my main purpose. And other than that, just seeing what I can do to make this place better. I love it here. I've been here for 18 years, 19 years. I am a single father, so I want to make sure that my kids have everything that they need, and I'm doing everything that I can to get them there. That's basically it. I'm not really good at speeches. If anyone has seen me, I'm super quiet, super normal, but get me going and I won't get off my soapbox. So.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. I can talk all day long. Good morning, everyone. Born and raised in Louisiana, I am one of 7 siblings. And one of the things that our parents taught us was about service, giving back. And for me, that involved joining the military. And so I love being in the military. If I were to get a phone call today, goodbye, I'm out of here. Because I love serving, I love giving back. And so when I think about the city of Salem, it looks a lot like the people in this room. How do we serve you? How do we see you? And for me, that means I got to put on a 24/7 equity lens. I got to see every single person. I got to lean into every single conversation. And there are some times I just got to be quiet and listen. I got to listen to the stories that are being told and those that are not being told. So how do we do that? I believe that we do that collectively together. We got to address some security issues. It's about safety. At the end of the day, at 1 o'clock in the morning, if you have an emergency, you're not going to call your librarian. You want someone to show up at your house, a first responder. So for me, it's about safety, making sure that you and I are safe, making sure that you and I are heard. And it's also about our children, what kind of legacy we're going to leave behind. And lastly, revenue. Somebody say money. It's always about the money. We got a money problem in Oregon, and we got to fix it.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. Good morning, one and all. My name is Vanessa Nordyke. I was born and raised in the ward that I now represent on City Council. I am a daughter of a small business owner, and our sister now manages that family business. And it is a 24/7 operation, as many of you know. When you run a business, it doesn't matter what time of day it is. There's always work to do. Even last night, it was probably 8 o'clock at night, and my sister and I were still talking about various aspects of the family business. That is what it's like, and I am so grateful to everything that my parents have done to position me for success. So I do not run a business myself. I run a nonprofit in Kaiser, and we are dedicated to serving children in foster care. I have been working with vulnerable and traumatized populations for a long, long time now. So I believe firmly in the need to address homelessness through data-informed solutions. It is true that we have more shelters than we did when I started. It is true that we have hundreds more units of affordable housing, but there is still a long, long way to go for Salem to look like what it did when I was growing up. I also know that because of the payroll tax, there's been a huge breach of trust within this community. And so the city has to work very hard with you, our business community, and other residents, and everyone else who made their votes, their positions quite clear in this election. I haven't seen a vote like that in a long time. Thank you.
I'm just going to apologize on behalf, you can keep the mic down there actually. We're going to start back with Vanessa and we'll come back this way. I'm going to apologize to all the candidates. That light is so freaking bright when I blink, I see light. You guys are in front of it and I'm not, so I'm just going to start off with that. So there'll be a bit of a preamble and then the question, and we'll start at that end and we'll work our way back this way. We're going to work on that. I'm sorry, first question. Current City of Salem City Council has identified the following priorities for the 24 policy agenda. A, sustaining infrastructure and services. B, engaging our community. C, planning for our future. And D, responding to our shelter crisis. Do you agree or disagree with these policy priorities and why? And I'm happy to repeat it as we go down because I'm sure we forgot.
No problem. Yes, I do agree with those. So in terms of infrastructure, Salem is rapidly growing. You've seen the growth. We were touring Rivenwood Apartments just yesterday. I've went to a chamber greeters events in the Holman Hotel. Our permitting office is extremely busy. So investing in infrastructure is extremely important. More people continue to move to the city. I have talked to city staff about how we can streamline this permitting process because delays cost money when you are developing properties. And I really appreciate all of the developers and real estate interests that have sat down with me and helped explain that the delays cost money. So doing everything we can to get to yes, to find ways to help grow our city in a sustainable way matters. Engagement, of course I agree with that. I probably have more engagement with my community than a variety of folks through social media. I hosted a town hall with other South Salem City councilors that was extremely well attended. And I am a big believer in talking to your residents. I believe that once you are elected, you do not only represent the people who voted for you, you represent everyone.
And I apologize, I just need to clarify, we have 1 minute for responses on these questions, so I apologize.
No problem. Sure. Are we good? Okay. Short answer to those questions, yes. As I stated earlier, in Oregon, we have a revenue problem. We got a serious problem. When we think back about what just happened with the kicker, and we had over $5 billion given back to us, we got a problem. And that doesn't start with the people in this room. That starts with the governor's office. If we're gonna make some changes, it does involve legislative action. If we're gonna make some changes to the infrastructure, it does involve legislative action. And as I said before, we have to be at the table to have these conversations. And I am still waiting to make sure every voice is heard, every face is seen to make those changes. Because if we don't do it together, we leave this problem for our kids. And I don't know about you, but that's not fair. And life isn't fair, so it's up to us to fix it.
Can you repeat the question for me? Because there's a lot in there.
The current city council has identified the following priorities for the 2024 policy agenda: sustaining infrastructure and services, engaging our community, planning for our future, and responding to our shelter crisis. Excuse me. Do you agree or disagree, and why?
So I definitely agree with that, but I think I would focus on the engagement part, because it can't just be one answer to fix everything. We need to look at everybody who's affected, so everyone that's affected needs to have a voice. So that's my main, I guess, if I was gonna say main takeaway from that, but I definitely agree. I definitely see some problems coming in the future, some problems we have now, and this is a time to really get a hold of everything and get on board and figure out what we're gonna do and get there.
All right, so the four things that you just mentioned, I mean, all great, and yes, I agree with them all, but they're also broad. What do they actually mean, right? Because that's the truth. We all agree, yes, we should absolutely be working on these items, but it's how do we work on these items that we disagree on, right? And so for me, yeah, wholeheartedly, I agree. We should work on our infrastructure and ensuring we have that infrastructure in place to be safe in our community. We should work on our engagement to make sure that every person in our community knows what's going on and has a chance to speak about it. We should work on employing and making sure our future is bright and making sure that we have the resources we need, both revenue or through reductions, to make sure that we have everything that's needed. And as far as our homeless effort goes, yeah, we need to see a reduction in the whole amount of our homeless crisis, not just the feel good stuff, but actually the whole number reducing. So wholeheartedly agree with the four items, no doubt. But I think that we need to be looking at how we're actually going to address each one of those things.
Speaking of agreement, I agree with Shane. Absolutely. The how is the most important thing. We can always talk about what the solutions are. And as the council, as any elected body, there's always kind of a feedback loop, I think. So that engagement piece, it's not just one of our policy goals. I think it should be underlying everything that we're doing. Our progress on infrastructure, on services, on planning for the future, on housing and development, all of that is only going to be possible if we're working with our community on that. It means working with civic organizations like the Chamber. It means working with anybody who wants to talk to us, anybody who will listen to us. Collaboration is the only way we're going to be able to get things done. We cannot go it alone on these important issues. And I think that we really need to be working with our partners at all levels, from nonprofits, from businesses to local and regional governments, to get these solutions.
Thank you. Yes, I agree with the four. We voted on this. I agree. These are the important things that we should be focusing on. I do want to focus on the top two, though, with you all today. I think that sustaining city services is actually a conversation about revenue. I think that the payroll tax was a strategic failure, something that had to happen in order to get the conversations going. We would not be in the position of having the governor talk about payment in lieu of taxes without the failure of the payroll tax. So I think we've made some good progress there. I am excited to see what the Revenue Task Force brings forward, because I think that something has to give. And I am fully believe that our community will come together around one idea that will help us move forward. But I see that happening in the next couple of years. So as we move forward, the conversation about sustaining our services is actually partly about revenue, partly about cuts, and how we're going to do that in an equitable fashion. Also engaging our community on how to move forward is critical, and hiring our communications director recently is a key part in that step.
Hi, everyone. I would like to focus primarily on the cracks in the infrastructure. So currently with the budget deficit that exists, I'm sure you guys know in terms of City of Salem's funding, the big problem isn't just the revenue issue or the lack of funding. The big problem is the fact that we aren't looking internally at the City of Salem, like what positions can be cut, what positions are no longer being utilized at the city level. I think as a city, the city has grown, and with that will come new positions. I think an internal auditor would also be very beneficial just to see where the finances are going instead of looking a year later. In terms of engagement, we need to engage our homeless population. I think there's a big disconnect between some of us and them. The community-based organizations, there's a ton of them here, but how many of us know all of them? Thank you.
I agree with you that housing is a generational problem. This didn't start now. It's been a problem for decades. Oregon is way behind. The guy from HUD the other day was saying we're like 49th in the nation for what we need in terms of housing. I believe the city doesn't have a revenue problem. I think we have a priorities problem. And I super resent the fact that public safety was used to frame the payroll tax imposition. And I don't ever want that to happen again. Public safety is not optional. It's our number one responsibility as council.
In regards to the priorities laid out, I agree. They're largely platitudes, though, with a lot of what we want, not with what we need. Community engagement should be part and parcel of what we're doing here. Shouldn't be a question. Shouldn't be a priority. It should be what we do. But in regards to what we can do in terms of investing in our infrastructure and planning for our future, I really think we can do a lot of change and re-envisioning what Salem actually does look like. We have large urban highways in Lancaster and commercial that cut off your businesses from actual engagement. A lot of times we invest in what we think is a walkable, good downtown. I should have that in South Salem. We should have that out in Lancaster. And that's the type of re-envisioning that we need. As we become a regional player, we should have those investments in infrastructure and be part of that conversation from the IBR, from all the way down up in Portland, down here, down to Eugene. That's what we need to be doing. We need to accelerate our efforts.
Well, it would be a little bit odd if I didn't agree with them, I would say, being the current mayor. So yes, I wholeheartedly agree with the priorities. For the first time in several years this year, we actually flipped the priority, and a homelessness crisis wasn't our number one, because we have identified that revenue really, if we don't solve that issue, we can't solve any of the others. In terms of making public safety a priority, it is. Sadly, when you collect all property taxes owed to the city of Salem, it covers 77% of our police and fire budget and nothing else. No parks, no Center 50 Plus, no library. So our primary revenue for our general fund doesn't even cover police and fire. So we absolutely have a revenue problem. And that's why I've been engaged with the governor, the legislature, folks on a federal level to try to solve that problem. And I do think we're making progress, but we've got more work to do. I'm very hopeful for the short session starting next week that we'll actually come out of there with some additional ongoing support. I could go on and on about that issue, but that'll be good for now. Thank you.
Clifford, we're going to start with you. We'll go all the way down, and then I will run down there and grab that mic and bring it back down to Mayor Hoy to finish it, and then start off the next section. Next question for everyone, and again, I'm happy to repeat it. As currently budgeted, Salem is facing a budget shortfall in projected revenues for the general fund starting next year's budget. General services include police, fire, public safety, parks, recs, recreation, I'll say that, library, land use planning and zoning, enforcement of codes, social services, municipal courts, and other services which impact citywide. Do you believe it is the city's best interest to develop alternative revenues? And if so, what funding mechanisms do you personally support or advocate for?
It's absolutely important to develop revenue. However, it's also asking where to get the money. Well, we've been asking that question for a couple of years, where to get the money. Through COVID, we received federal funding. But the reality is, that, our tax base needs to grow. That's been identified. How do we do that? We do that through development. We do that by putting people in homes. We can definitely pursue kind of that state route, but it's nice that the governor did say that there's a potential. The reality is, I don't think the state of Oregon is going to cut us a check. Sorry, I think that's the reality. So ultimately, we have to use the mechanisms that do exist in order to raise that revenue. It is also a spending problem. I'll separate emergency services and the community services. I think we're spending too much in emergency services, not getting the outcomes we need.
C.S. Lewis said, when the whole world is running towards a cliff, who is running in the opposite direction appears to have lost his mind. I don't believe we have a revenue problem. The list of fees and taxes on my utility bills and all that stuff, I've never looked so much at it in all my life. And I'm like, what are we doing here? I do believe we need an examination, a thorough examination of spending in the city so we can prioritize things appropriately and make public safety top.
Like I mentioned before, there are some cracks in the infrastructure. However, in regards to revenue, we have hotels here, but the hotels are rarely filled to capacity outside of a few events that might occur during the summer. I think that's an area the city could make a lot of money with that 9% occupancy tax. If you have hotels fully filled, people spending money within the cities of Salem, that's a lot of money the city could make. There's also possibly a business license fee. Most cities have those. Salem is one that doesn't.
Thank you. I spoke about this earlier, but I will continue to say that, yes, I agree we do have a revenue problem. I've known about this issue since 2018 and have been advocating for solutions. This is a statewide issue that every single city is suffering under because of measures 5 and 50. So I believe that we need to get at the core of that and have reform of 5 and 50. That, of course, does not happen at a city level. That happens at a state level. I'm not sure that there is any interest in moving forward with that at the state level, but I hope that we can develop that over the coming years. I think the conversation in Salem has pushed that conversation harder than anything else in the last, 20 some odd years. We have been making cuts for years and years and years, and we are to the point where we can no longer do that. So I believe in our revenue task force, and I look forward to seeing what they bring forward, and we'll work with my fellow councilors on how to make our next step, and I look forward to doing that with them.
Short answer, yes. I do think we have a revenue problem. I think that problem primarily is a result of state policies. And as I said before, we cannot go it alone, especially on this issue where we're having this problem because of a state problem. I've been disappointed, frankly, in my position where we hear from cities all over the state who come and speak to my office. But we don't see from Salem. And I think that's lacking. I think we really need to double down on our efforts to work with our state partners to try to address this problem, because no matter what we do as a city alone, we're never going to be able to fix it. We have $1.8 billion approximately in state property that's paying zero. Everybody in this room is paying more in property taxes to the city government than our state is. And I think that's unacceptable. I think that's where we need to focus our efforts.
All right. Do we need revenue? Maybe. I mean, that's the reality. We don't 100% know right now because there are some priorities that we need to be readjusting within our current budget. We spent $20 million last year as a line item budget on our homeless effort. We didn't see a $20 million reduction necessarily in what that bought us. Therefore, we need to start looking at what our priorities are, how we're addressing them, and start making more effective change. If we can make more effective change in areas of our system, then it can have long-term effects and save us money. I recently did fire ride along, and with that fire ride along, we had 8 overdoses throughout our city that night. 2 at Arches, 2 at the Center Street micro shelters, 1 at the skate park downtown, and then 3 spread out across the city. That's resources that we're utilizing on a drug problem. I did a police ride along. 75% of our calls that night were related to our homeless population in one way or the other, whether that be from a circumstance that they had an issue or a circumstance of an issue they had caused. It was a large portion.
Again, like Mr. Matthews said, I don't know if we have a revenue problem. I know that there are definitely some issues. There's definitely the way, I guess the short answer, because I don't want to go on and on and on. I guess what I really want to say is that I could say we should grow our small business community so that way they can help with that, but then the burden shouldn't be on them. I don't believe that we can cut our way out of it. I don't believe that we can pass arbitrary taxes and pass those on to the voters. I believe that we definitely need to fix what's going on, but it's not going to be just one thing to fix it. There is no one size fits all. So what it is that we can do to fix that, I don't know yet. I mean, we really need to look at the whole picture and then proceed forward from there. I mean, and that's the only way that that's going to work. Because as others have said, we've cut before. We tried to pass a tax that did not go over well, which, whether you fall on one side or the other, that wasn't an answer. So we really need to look at everything that's going on and then proceed from there.
Can you repeat that question?
You bet. As currently budgeted, Salem is facing a budget shortfall in projected revenues for the general fund starting in next year's budget. General funds, general services include police, fire, public safety, parks and recreation, library, land use planning, zoning, enforcement of code, social services, municipal courts, and other services which provide citywide impact. Do you believe that the city's best interest is in the city's best interest to develop alternative revenues? And if so, what funding mechanisms do you personally support or advocate for?
Thank you. Oregon has a structural problem, and it's not a secret. When I think about those particular services, we got some major problems that are not only here, but those that are about to hit us. 5 and 50, the kicker. When you think about the mortgages that we pay our taxes. We pay our taxes. I have a house. I pay a mortgage. We have buildings in the city and the state. Taxes are not being paid on. We need help from the governor's office. We need help. We can't do it by ourselves. It does require legislative action. And for those of us that are business owners, you and I both know that it hits our pockets. And if we can't get the right people in, what do? We vote them out. So we have to find a way to fix the problem. And until we do that, we have to invite everyone here, whether you are going to be a part of the budget committee or the revenue task force. It involves every single one of us.
Thank you so much. When I talk to my residents about the priorities for our city, I can tell you they always start with wanting to feel safe in their communities. They want rapid response times when they need a call for help. They want rapid response times when they see someone else struggling. Our city, like cities around the state, has inherited decades of underinvestment in mental health services and drug treatment. And on top of that, our law enforcement, our firefighters, our paramedics, our social services workers, and many others are dealing with the daily fallout of the failure of Measure 110. On top of that, my residents in beautiful South Salem would also like to see sidewalks. We annexed in properties decades ago and never built them. My residents would like to be able to walk their children safely to school. The retirees in my communities would like to safely walk to a park bench, and they would like to see the grass trimmed and so on. It's difficult to do all those things at once. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I do believe we have a revenue problem, as I stated earlier. I don't think that there's one answer to this issue. I don't think there's one magic bullet that's going to solve the problem. I support the work of the Revenue Task Force, and I look forward to the recommendations that they bring forward, whatever they may be, and I hope it's multiple options, because like I said, there's not going to be one silver bullet that solves this problem. Money from the state, if we get a payment in lieu of taxes, that's not going to solve our problem. It's going to help. Being smart with our budget isn't going to solve the problem. It's going to help. All of the different revenue sources that are available to us, whether it's a levy, a parks district, a library district, any of those things, I think those are all potential, and I look forward to hearing from the Revenue Task Force. And when we talked about our priorities in the last question, this Revenue Task Force is really a huge part of that engagement. There's going to be listening sessions, town halls, all sorts of things, plus just the committee itself. That in itself is engaging in our community and trying to resolve this issue. So I'm looking forward to the work that they do.
Thank you. So we're going to now move in. We didn't have any rebuttals, which is really interesting and good. I think that's good because we're already a few minutes behind. So what we're going to do is we're going to move into a section where each candidate will have 20 seconds to ask a concise question of their opponent. And then each opponent will have 30 seconds to reply. 1 minute to reply. So we will start, just so everyone's up under the same ideas as we go down. We'll start with Mayor Hoy. You will ask Clifford and Julie questions, and then it'll turn to you to ask each other questions, so on and so forth. It'll just go all the way down. So with that,
Same question for both.
no, you can ask either way. Okay. So with that, 20 seconds to ask the question of each, and if they need to repeat it, we'll repeat it, and then we'll just move on.
For clarity, he can ask a different question of either.
Yes.
And Clifford, you can ask a different question, Julie.
Okay. Which is unique to the mayoral race because there's 3 where everyone else has 2. It'll just be one question each. So with that, Mayor Hoy, please.
Okay. Thank you. I will start with Councilor Hoy. Second guessing is easy. What's your proposal to address the homelessness crisis? And more importantly, if you have one, why haven't you brought it before the council in the last 16 months that you've been on council?
Well, we're not going to be able to do anything without a spirit of cooperation and collaboration with the county and the state. As a city, as a municipality, it's not our job alone to address homelessness and all the things that come with it. Oregon's done a beautiful job of building a living room for dysfunction where everybody who wants to do whatever drugs they want to do can come and be. When did littering become okay? It used to be a crime. Maybe it still is, but nobody's doing anything about it. So I think we have a lot of issues, and we have to do it in cooperation with the county and the state. Stop just having meetings together. We need to have meetings with everyone and figure out how to approach the problems and fix them at the root.
And for Clifford, I will basically the same question, but since you're not on council, what is your proposal to address the homelessness situation here in Salem?
Dollar for dollar, our investment in those community organizations that are providing supporting housing and services to homeless, our homeless neighbors. It's worth it, and we should continue to expand that. We can measure. It's an outcome. We can decide. Hey, we're putting the money in. Arches Hotel is one of those great examples. We put money in. Now we have housing. You can measure it. You can see from that hotel who's getting supportive housing. We can track that as the city continues to develop more affordable housing. That's the investment we need, and it does take money. And the question is where will it come from? But those are measurable outcomes that we need as a city to know that we are actually making a dent on this issue. Sure. I'll save us a little time. The same question for both. with the upcoming deficit that we're facing, my question is whether or not when we do make budget choices, will emergency services, fire and police, continue to track at 60% of our city's budget?
Well, I can't predict the future. I'm one vote on the 18-member budget committee and one vote on the 9-member council. But if I had to predict, I would say yes, because public safety is a high priority, and funding a 24/7 operation is expensive. And so, yeah, I believe it will continue to track at that level, if not more.
My response would be whatever it takes. Whatever it takes to help people to feel safe. That's our responsibility as a group. Yeah. Oh, it's my turn. Okay. Well, I'll head to Mayor Hoy first. Last summer, the payroll tax came to council as an imposition. You were the 5th vote that made that imposition a thing. Can you tell me why?
Thank you for that question. Yeah, I can definitely tell you why. Because I believe that solving our revenue problem to be able to fund important services like fire, police, homeless response, all of the things that we do in the city is a huge priority. And I knew we couldn't do it without new revenue. And I believe that was our best effort to be able to do so. I also knew that the likelihood of it actually going through was quite small. And so I looked forward to the conversations that we're having now to raise the conversation throughout the state. If you've noticed, we're actually talking about revenue now on a statewide level. I'm having conversations with mayors all over Oregon. I'm having conversations with the governor. We have finally raised this issue. We're starting to take our place in the state. For too long, Salem has kind of gone under the radar, and I have elevated our status to be able to say, look, we have a problem here and we need some help. And it turns out every city in Oregon has the same problem that we do. We just have a little extra problem because we're the state capital.
How would you have voted on the payroll tax?
Well, I testified against it, so I sure hope I would have voted in the same manner. I don't think the tax inherently was a bad idea. It was trying to solve a problem. Ultimately, it was a bad tax. I'll give you an example. I work for a company in Canby, so I live here. I wouldn't have been paid. I wouldn't have been paying that. That's wild. We're seeking revenue in the wrong places. It was just a bad tax, folks. The intention wasn't wrong. We were trying to fund a budget, and I get that. But ultimately, it was a bad tax, and it didn't involve our community. And that's why you saw so many not only show up to that council meeting, but ultimately sign a petition and vote against it. We can find new sources of revenue. I do believe that our community will support that. But in short, yeah, I would have voted against it.
Hi, Virginia. Building off of the success in your current role on council, what do you hope to accomplish within the next year if you were elected?
Thank you. Yeah, there's so much going on. Of course, as the mayor said, revenue is going to be the council's top priority moving forward this year. But for me, specific to Ward 1, continuing investment in our downtown, especially for housing. But for me, especially, it's North Downtown and the Front Street area. Trying to either go for a raise grant from the federal government to fix the street so that it can bring in development in that area. Or maybe even look at an urban renewal district in that area to likewise do the same kind of work. We cannot develop that area until we fix Front Street. And that is a huge, huge problem that is beyond the city's capacity to fix alone. So we're going to have to look at other options on doing that. So for me personally, in this next year, it's those things. Probably since I have time, also our transportation master plan update, which is kicking off. That's also going to be a big part of the work that we're doing in the coming year. So thank you for the question. Yes, yes. So my question for you is that your hometown was Phoenix, Arizona recently. What do you see as the similarities between Phoenix and Salem, and what have you learned from Phoenix that you want to implement here in Salem?
Thank you for the question. As she said, I came from Phoenix, and Phoenix, just like Salem, is vast. It spreads all over the place if any of you guys have visited there. But politically, there's a big divide between Phoenix and the surrounding areas. There isn't a lot of collaboration. There's a lot of silos. I think those still exist here in Salem. You guys may know each other, all of you in this room, but outside of here, how many other people do we all interact with?
Shane. It's my understanding that you don't support raising revenue, at least you're not sure that we should. But at the same time, I also understand that you want to prioritize increasing funding to emergency services and first responders. So without raising revenue, what specifically then would you like to cut in order to increase those funding to those services?
Yeah. So, and as far as what specifically to cut, I think there's a lot of questions about that, and what items are we prioritizing right now that maybe should still be prioritized, but maybe farther down the list. But I think again, where the big ticket item is the items that we're spending money on that we're maybe not seeing the results that we want, and reallocating either those funds or reallocating our process and our priorities. We talked about the $20 million to the homeless service already. Right now, we utilize a housing first model. That model assumes that the housing is the top priority for that person. And I think what we're finding, at least what I'm finding, especially being out in the community, I've inundated myself with this since September, walked the homeless camps, been out with multiple organizations. We're finding that there is usually a secondary issue that we're calling a secondary issue, but it's really the primary issue. Someone is homeless because they have an addiction problem. Someone is homeless because they have a mental health problem. If it's housing, absolutely, that should be their first priority. But we shouldn't be utilizing a model that is a housing first only program. We should be using a first is first program. Addiction, mental health, housing, whatever it is what we should be focusing on. Originally, when you play sports, they say don't focus on the other guy, right? Run your own race. So originally, as a candidate, I wasn't going to ask a question, but as we've gone through this, as a community member and as a business owner, I have kind of wondered. So you're endorsed by Mayor Hoy, Councilor Stapleton, and Councilor Phillips, who are kind of the genesis and the leadership behind the payroll tax. Looking forward, if a second try at the payroll tax was proposed and/or a business tax, is that something you would support?
Well, first of all, I think the most important aspect underlying that question is just exactly that, what underlies it. The city council had the right to pass the tax, and the voters had the right to refer it to the ballot, and they did, and the voters had their say, and they reversed the council's position. Personally, I did vote for the tax. The council is trying to solve a problem that has existed for years. They were going to try to do it sooner. We had the pandemic, and then also received some federal funds, but I'm not going to say that I think it was the perfect solution. And if I was on council at the time, I can't say for sure if I would have supported it. And if it comes up again, I can't say for sure if I'll support it. We have a revenue task force, and I think it's really important that we give those voices the opportunity to have their say in what they recommend to solve this problem. I do think it's a problem that needs to be solved, because if we start cutting now, we're going to be putting people back on the streets. We're going to be rolling back all the progress that we made, and I don't want our downtown and our city to go back to looking like what it did during COVID.
All right, so short, simple, keep this. So, being on the budget committee, correct?
Correct.
Now, do you think, and you were in support of the payroll tax, do you think that you did everything you could before passing that on to the voter, before recommending to pass that and supporting it? Do you feel like you did everything you could prior to that?
Oh, that's an easy answer. No. There's a lot more we could have
Hey,
done.
I'm sorry. What question? Come on, it was really hard to hear down here. Can you just repeat the question so we can all hear it?
Short and simple. Do you feel like you did everything you could before you passed that on to the voters? And being in support of that, do you think that was the right choice?
My answer hasn't changed. It's still no. We did not do a good job in rolling that out. And I'll stand behind that. When I think about what it takes to make sure that every voice is heard, and I've said that before, there were some things that we could have done better. Hindsight 2020, yes. We could have had the opportunity to go from community to community, from ward to ward, to engage our voters. We did not do a good job of that. And I sit with those individuals who said, hey, let's bring this forward. We made some mistakes. And I think it takes any leader, any elected official, you got to own your mistakes. If you're not willing to own your mistakes, as I said before, find a new job, because everybody in here is going to make a mistake. Going forward, I am still very much saying that we have a structural problem and we have a security and safety problem. One of the ward members, one of them in my community, they said this to me, point blank. If there's emergency at 1 o'clock in the morning, they're not calling the librarian. They want a first responder. They want a police. They want someone there. At the end of the day, you and I both want that. So it is about safety. It is about security. And that matters to every single one of us in this room. We may not say it, but it matters. All right, my question now, I can ask? Okay, Mr. Jackson. So with that particular question you asked me, and I stand by my answer, what would you have done differently?
For sure. So to answer your question, wait, ask it again.
Payroll tax. We rolled it out our way. What would you have done differently?
What I would do differently, pass it to the voters. I don't think we should make decisions for people. I'm sitting around the table. I have to figure out whether I'm going to pay this bill or I'm going to buy groceries. This is just what happens when you have a budget shortfall, the same as the city has a budget shortfall. So I don't get to just say, you know, my neighbor over here is doing a little bit better, so let me throw my grocery bill on this dude. I have to figure it out. So I don't think we should have passed it. I mean, I don't think we should have just like let the council do it. It needed to go to the voters. That's it. So what I would have done differently is I would have started there and then built on.
Now, Vanessa, you don't actually have an opponent to ask a question to, so we are going to move into closing remarks at this point. And since the mic is down there, we'll just start down there with you if you're okay with that. So 1 minute for closing remarks to everybody, and then we'll wrap it up.
Thank you so much. I want to thank the Chamber of Commerce for hosting us today, and I welcome any member of the Chamber to come and meet with me. I'd be more than happy to come to you and listen to you. It is a true honor to represent the ward that raised me. And as I said earlier, once you are elected to office, once you are occupying this seat, you have a duty to everyone in your ward, whether they voted for you or not. You also have a duty to exercise your own independent judgment. You also have a duty to work across the aisle whenever possible to find common ground. And when your city or wherever your elected body is facing a budgetary shortfall, that opportunity and need for bipartisanship is greater than ever. And I'm proud to say that I have worked across the aisle, and that's why I'm sitting in the position that I am in today. So I appreciate your opportunity, but if you have questions for me, please do not hesitate to contact me. I'm more than happy to sit down with you and listen to you, because that's what elected officials should do. Listen. Thank you.
I believe listening is crucial, and I like to start out by asking a question. How can I help? How can I help? How can I help? Several years ago, there was a certain phrase that was coined all across America, and that was, take a gap year. If you have kids in this room, if your child came to you and say, hey, I want to have a gap year. A gap year is that time for your young person when they graduate from high school to think about what they're going to do next. It's a gap. One of my friends took a gap year, and their son was shot during that gap year. They did not anticipate that. It happened, and there was a reaction for it. When I think about what's happening in the city and the state, we got some gaps. We got some major gaps. Since COVID, over 26,000 people have moved in. That's the same size as Woodburn. That's a gap. Look at the homelessness. People are moving in. Measure 110, drugs on the street. That's a gap. Gaps can do one or two things. They can either propel you to go forward or to go back. And I'm a firm believer that we got to find a way to close the gap and do what it takes to get out of the situation we're in.
All right. So first of all, thank you guys all for sitting there this early in the morning and listening to us go on and on and on and on and on. I wish we could go on a little bit more, but no. Basically, I'm just going to close with saying we got work to do. We have a lot of issues. We have a lot of different suggestions. We have a lot of people coming at it from a lot of different ways. I want to be one of the ones coming at it from a lot of different ways. So feel free to ask me any questions you want. I'm around. You will see me at an event. You will see me on YouTube. You will see me. Feel free to ask me any questions. I'll be happy to explain further my positions, let you know my background, where I'm from. We didn't really have that much time to get into that, so I apologize. But by all means, talk to me. Let's figure it out. The thing about it is when we get right down to it, we all have the same wants, fears, issues, goals. We all want to get there. It's just about how we get there, but we're not going to get there unless we get there together. So in order to get there together, we got to have conversations. So by all means.
I'm not terribly old, but I have lived a lot of different lives in this community throughout my life, and I don't get into this a lot, but I was what would be considered an at-risk youth, right? I grew up in Northeast Salem, went to McKay. My parents didn't feel like education was a huge priority, so I barely graduated high school. I mean, in fact, the day of graduation, I'm doing packets to try to get my credits. And so then I went to college, right? Not really expected. I would tell you, if you talk to anyone from high school, they would say it's shocking that I'm not in jail or living in my mom's basement, right? Those were my two options. And so, it's humbling in how far I've come, because I know what it is to be an at-risk youth. I know what it is to be a young father that's trying to, pay the bills. I know what it is to be a married person at a young age that's trying to support a family, and then to finally come through that and be able to have a house and have resources. And so because of that, it equips me pretty well to be able to represent a larger base of population. And while I'm elected by my ward, my goal and my objective and my focus is representing the whole city, because that's really what you have to do in this position. Is not just represent your ward, you have to represent everyone.
First, I just want to say thank you again to everyone for hosting this really cool event, and thank you, Shane, for a really productive conversation today. This campaign for me, again, is really all about the need for collaboration, building and maintaining relationships with community partners at all levels, from the smallest cafe to the largest corporate office, and from regional partners to our federal representatives, because no doubt Salem is facing some historically challenging times. But we're not going to be able to realize our opportunities by trying to just go it alone. I've been doing this work for over a decade, and I'm committed to the success of our city. I've been engaged, and I will continue to be engaged, and that's what I can promise, is that I will show up, and I will be present in the community, and I'll continue to do this work as the city councilor for Ward 3, and I will be a zealous advocate for my constituents. And I look forward to continuing to have conversations with all of you and civic organizations around our city to work together for progress. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me today. It's a delight to be here and talk to you guys about all these pressing issues. I think what you've heard a lot from folks here is a need to listen and engage with our communities. I think that's vital to moving forward. But I also think it is about having a vision and having the courage to see it through. And I really am proud of the current council and what we've been able to accomplish over the last 3 years. I want to continue doing that work for Ward 1 and just really investing in our community and pulling together around really tough issues. And really just an honor to serve and be here today. So thanks so much.
Thank you for taking some time out of your morning just to listen to us talk. You guys could be anywhere else but here. I would love for Salem to be a city that thrives, flourishes, a city that people mention, they want to visit, and just hang out in. Not necessarily to do bad things, only good things. And I also think if you guys just take a chance on me, you would see the value I can bring, having not lived in Salem my whole life, and seeing what it's like in the valley. Yes, different climate, but overall, Salem could be a great city that stands on its own merit.
Thank you. I want to be mayor because I care. The mayor has a lot to do with what lands on council's agenda. And I want to be helpful with that. I want to prioritize spending. One of my colleagues on council said, "You're going to be really good at this because you listen." I do listen. I hear the people that live in my ward, and I hear the people all over the city asking for more and better, and they deserve it. That's why I want to be mayor.
I want to thank you for your time. I appreciate it because in this room, I see partners and advocates for our city. I see it across this table as well. I'm a stand-up comedian, so thank you. Got no jokes because what we're facing is serious. I believe in Salem. I grew up here and I'm still here. I believe that my future is here. I believe that we can develop our city in such a way that we're not losing the talent among our workforce to other cities. Like I said, I work in Canby. I shouldn't work in Canby, folks. So I believe we can find the folks here as we invest in our community, in getting the outcomes that we actually do want. We say we want things. Are we willing to pay for them? What are those things? And I think we can all work together to identify how we better can move forward. And I do believe that you are going to be great partners and advocates in that manner.
Thank you, and thank you to the chamber, to the board and the staff for putting on this forum today. I appreciate the opportunity. Being the mayor of Salem has been the honor of my lifetime. This is important work that takes dedication and leadership, and it takes someone who can work with people of all perspectives to forge a path forward. It takes someone who understands how government works and what levers to pull to make things happen. I have demonstrated those qualities, and I've always put Salem's future at the forefront. Salem continues to come of age, and I'm asking the voters of Salem to give me 2 more years to see that come to fruition. Thank you.
We are, just so that we're all on the same page with everyone in the room, Tom has some additional written questionnaire that he's going to hand to the candidates. And then we will stay in this room once the candidates are released, have some conversation. These written questionnaires will be back when, Tom? When are you asking for them to be back?
It's on the sheet. I believe it's February 11th.
So February 11th or prior, we will have those gathered back. That will then go to exec and the board for discussion, post this discussion that we're going to have here today. With all of that said, there's a lot of thank yous up and down between the candidates, but I think it's really important, as people in this room know who have volunteered, who have run for elected official, volunteered to be on boards, etc. It is a difficult thing to run for elected official, and so on behalf of the chamber, myself, I truly, heartfelt thank you all for running, regardless of how things turn out throughout this election cycle. It is really important for you all to hear. It is not an easy task, and we really, really, truly appreciate you being here early in the morning. I know it's not comfortable for everybody, but nonetheless, thank you all, and will you all please